Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This is the Bodega Cat Book Club, and we are introducing a new book that we'll be reading for the spiritual edition. So we have three different book clubs that we meet every week. The first one is the spiritual edition, which is on Mondays, every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We also have a book club that meets every Wednesday, and that's the health section where we read about different health interests, people who are interested in eating right, eating well, anything alternative for the health. And that's every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then we have the financial edition every Thursdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we try to read the classics, usually people who have passed away or who have, or the book has been around for like 500, not 500, sorry, like 20, 30, 40, 50 years or more, because usually, the way I see it is classic books, quote, classic books. Um, they've stood the test of time, but you still have to read it with a grain of salt. So that's just my comment about that. But anyways, let's get back to this particular book. We're going to start a new book in, I believe, August. And I wanted to do a little introduction of that book, of this book. So this book was inspired by a podcast interview I did with a gentleman who is one of our Bodega Cat members. His name is Samuel. Shout out to you, Samuel. He came to our center and presented this book. At first, I thought he was the author, but it turned out he wasn't. He was just, um, he was inspired by this book a lot because um, he had a critical role in translating this book into Chinese and getting it published in Chinese. And he met the author himself before the author passed away, and uh, he felt compelled, inspired to um, promote this book as best as he can. So I will leave the podcast description below, as well as Samuel's links and in terms of where to find him and his website, so you guys can learn more about him and what he does and who he is and things like that. But this book was very interesting. In that podcast interview, we talked about this book and some of his experiences with it, his inspirations of it. And and I said, this might be an interesting book to read for our book club members and to introduce this book to them, to our audience. Now, I'm not a UFO uh, junkie, if you want to call it that, or expert. I've kind of dabbed, if you will, kind of dibble dabbled in the UFO space. There's a lot of, as you well know, there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation out there, and it is difficult to kind of sort through what the truth is. But the way I see it is, it doesn't um, it doesn't really matter what I believe. The truth will eventually come out. The truth always comes out. It might take, a year, it might take 10 years, it might take centuries, hundreds of years, but it will eventually come out. So whether UFOs are true or not, I don't know. However, I am interested, um, all the physical stories aside, in terms of like abductions and things like that. And my take with the UFO community, some of the stories are very dark. And the way I see it is our consciousness creates our world. And so if we focus on the darkness grows bigger and bigger and bigger. And so my philosophy is you become aware of the darkness, but focus on the solution and on the light. So I like to, find stories or things that are positive. And the tone of this book is pretty positive, I think. There are certain stories that are, like if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've read it. Uh, they have stories about wars and things like that, but that's not the emphasis. They don't really dwell on it or get into it. So, uh, for this particular book, I enjoyed reading it. It certainly stretches one's imagination. Now, if you look at the cover of this book, it says Abduction to the Ninth Planet. And underneath there, it says a true report by the author who was physically abducted to another planet. I have never been abducted to another planet. I don't know. I'm sure I don't know if it exists or not, but I do know in the mystical realm or in the inner world, as my teacher calls it, there are many different layers, many different dimensions. So, you know, we'll read it with a uh, grain of salt. At the very least, it's very entertaining. And it certainly stretches your imagination. And I know there are some people out there who likes to stay grounded, stay in this dimension, want um, physical evidence and things like that. Yes, you do need that. But there is another component of the non-physical. Um, and I think it's good to acknowledge it, until we as a collective evolve spiritually as a human being, as humans, as the whole collective human species. uh, we can only travel through the higher dimensions in our dreams, in our meditations, but eventually it will physicalize to our uh, in some way, shape, or form. So I don't know if that makes any sense. But anyways, this book, we will be reading the preface today as a little introduction. And I will leave the registration link below. You can join us live on Zoom if you wish. You could follow with us if you have a book. I will also leave the link to buy the book if you want to buy it. And if you want to join us live for the Zoom links or Zoom calls, you can do that. Follow along with your book or follow along with, our on the Zoom screen on the camera here as well. And or you could, just follow us on YouTube. We put all our readings or books on YouTube, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And we'll see what happens. And leave us comments. You like it, you don't like it. It's full of BS. It's not. You really believe it. Whatever. So, anyways, that's what community is all about. Okay. So this book is called the Thiaoouba Prophecy, the Golden Planet. And it's also known as Abduction to the Ninth Planet, as you can see on the top of the page there. And this is a true report by the author who was physically abducted to another planet. And the author's name is Michel Desmarquet, and he was French. Was. He passed away. I don't remember when, but anyways. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to move the camera in a little bit so you guys can see better. Oh, the other way. Other way, Christina. And if you have any books that you want us to read, I'll leave a link in the description box below as well. So you can recommend health books or spiritual books or financial books. And we'd be happy to read it. Okay. Okay, so the author's name is Michel Desmarquet. As I said, he was French. Thiaoouba Prophecy, the Golden Planet, formerly known as Abduction to the Ninth Planet. And I wonder if that's a reference to the ninth dimension. Interesting. A true report by the author who was physically abducted to another planet. Believing is not enough. You need to know. And one of the things about connecting to the divine intelligence, some people call it God, some people call it Great Spirit, some people call it Great Architect, some people call it divine intelligence. It doesn't matter what name you give it. It's the energy that you want it to experience. Um, is that your connection, a through line, a direct connection to the divine is the knowing part. And that's one of the clairvoyant properties. So you have clairvoyant, clairaudient, things like that. Knowing is one of them. It's called clairsentient. So it's just the inner knowing that you just, yeah, that sounds right, or kind of thing. Some people call it intuition. It's like uh, you have this nagging. You hear stories about people having this nagging thing inside them that says, "Don't go down that street," or bring more quarters, or let's park over here instead of over there. Those are the knowing. And that's a direct line to the divine intelligence. So that's why I always said that your intuition is your superpower, because that is a direct line to God, essentially. Okay. All right, let's read the forward. Let me mention just a little closer. Okay. All right, forward. Here we go. There are ways of receiving information from a higher level of consciousness and therewith knowledge about the laws of all existence and the way we would live a better life and easier life through intuition, through astral traveling, and through actual physical experience. Michel Desmarquet was chosen to do the latter, and that in connection with the mission of the people of a planet of a higher, more advanced, and enlightened existence to bring to us messages and knowledge so much needed at this critical stage of development on our planet in order to construct a bridge to the next higher step in our ladder of evolution. As it appears, Michelle had been taken to a planet spiritually and technologically so far advanced that is in a position to take on the role of a mentor for those planets still on a lower evolutionary stage in this galaxy, a role that is naturally foreseen for a more advanced planet in the hierarchy of our universe. And Earth is one of those lower evolutionary stage. It is important to realize that Michelle has confirmed what we have always known and what we have recognized as our unique free will to reflect upon situations, assess them, and make decisions for the way we want to act. It is still up to our free will whether we ignore the tidings brought to us and cling to the self made concept that man is different from nature and can afford to live outside of it, or to use our mental and emotional capabilities to reach the insight of our free will is nothing but the is nothing but the limitations to think, feel, and act within the realms of the laws of this nature as these apply to every other non-human system. Interesting paragraph. Let's read that again and break it down. It is still up to our free will. So we still have free will as human beings. Whether we ignore the tidings brought to us and cling to the self-made concept that man is different from nature and can afford to live outside of it, or to use our mental and emotional capabilities to reach the insight of our free will is nothing but the limitations to think, feel, and act within the realms of the laws of this nature as these apply to every other non-human system. Okay, so the way I read that is that as human beings, we still have free will. We can choose to decide to ignore the higher dimensions and the higher realms and choose to live within our little box, a little matrix, a third dimensional matrix here, or we can choose to embrace that there is a higher dimension and explore. You know, it's not to say that you believe in it, but having an open mind to explore, to explore the possibilities, let's just say, right? That's the way how I interpret it, reading that particular sentence or paragraph. Hmm. Okay. After having read Michel's report of his journey, four conditions have become very apparent to me. One, everywhere in this universe, the galaxy, there exists a material physical world. And that goes for the fourth and fifth dimension as well. I don't know if the higher dimensions have a physicality to it. There might, but not, probably not as dense as the third dimension. I don't know. I've never been there. Interesting. Interesting thought, eh? Number two, likewise, there exists everywhere a non-material, non-physical world. That is the one to which we have given the name spiritual world. Number three, both worlds are only the two antipodes of form manifestations which make the entire universe, that is all existence, possible, namely energy. Right. So the great Nikola Tesla, which is a brilliant, brilliant scientist, he says, you know, if you want to understand how the universe works, understand energy, vibration, and frequency. And I think that's where we should concentrate the healing. We don't need, you know, our dimension here, you know, I was a hospice nurse for over 25 years, and the conventional treatment for cancer, which I've seen, you know, most of my patients were cancer patients, terminal cancer. They have surgery, which is cut you open, chemotherapy, which is mass poison you, and radiation, which is mass burning you. So those are the three conventional treatments for cancer, which isn't a lot of options, which has nothing to do with energy or frequency or vibration. So interesting. If you really want to study health, um, understand understand those three: energy, frequency, and vibration. And we'll be exploring that in our Wednesday book clubs, health edition. So you guys are welcome to join us. Okay, number four, it is the understanding and subsequent mastery of the behavior of this energy, the so-called metaphysical laws, which enable us to come to terms with and to the proper handling of the physical world, not vice versa. So if you really want to think about healing, you got to start with the non-physical, the metaphysical aspect, and then work your way down to the mental, emotional, physical aspect. Because the metaphysical or the spiritual aspect is the blueprint to the physical, the mental and physical. So if you change the metaphysical, if you change the physical, if you change the metaphysical blueprint or the spiritual blueprint, eventually you will change the mental blueprint, the emotional blueprint, and the physical blueprint, and the manifestations of the illness of those categories. I hope that makes sense. Um, okay. Michel Desmarquet's book is not only a straightforward report of his awesome experiences, but also the many doubts he and others of us expresses as he goes through a world so paradisiacally, oh, okay, paradisiacally. What? Is that even a word? Para, I guess it comes from paradise, paradisiacally. Hmm, interesting. Okay, different from ours and yet so familiar to us, for intuitively we feel and know that the real difference between them lies only in the maturity applied to handle the abundance the universe provides for us. The proof for the truth of Michel's report does not lie in the forgotten pieces of metal or not taken photographs of what he has seen. It lies in the common sense that his news expresses and the verifiability of the principles that he conveys, many of which he has not the scientific and metaphysical education to confirm. Another thing about intuition is that um, it works in the right brain hemisphere, which is uh, right brain, which is the artist brain, the art, the um, images, metaphors, things like that. The left brain works with facts and numbers and details and things like that. So with the intuition part, you kind of have a knowing, but you don't know why. So, and sometimes the physical evidence comes after, uh, comes afterwards, comes after the intuition. Because the intuition kind of know, oh, something's wrong. I can't, you hear this a lot. You say, I don't like that guy. This doesn't sit well with me, and I can't put my finger on it. I can't say why. That's intuition. That's connecting to the divine. Okay. Um, will Michel Desmarquet's role as a messenger and more important, his information be acknowledged? Our daily experience tells us that we humans have taken a destructive path on this planet, and in fact, in our whole development. Whether we will stubbornly and childishly adhere to steer against the flow of the river we swim in, or be part of it for the harmonious and enjoyable experience of it, is up to the wisdom in the conclusions we draw. The big institutions we have set up will not, because they cannot, help change direction, nor will the custodians of the universe, as they abide strictly by the law of non-interference with others' endeavors to come to wisdom and thus evolution. The quantum leap in consciousness, the quantum leap in consciousness we hear so much about these days cannot be organized or institutionalized. It is bound to take place in the heart and in the head of every individual, for this is so by the very laws of nature. And that was written by Howard Henke, August 1993. Author of Involution, Evolution, and the Development of Consciousness. Okay. Oh, I'm going to give you a little preview here of all the contents. I won't read it all, but I just wanted to kind of let you look at it to see what is the contents of the chapters. Okay. All right. So they do make a lot of some reference to things that are happening here on Earth, or some of the physical remnants of what they talk about, like Easter Island, for example, and Christ. A very interesting chapter on Christ. Okay. Special note to the reader. I, the author, Michel Desmarquet, wish to thank publicly Janet Henderson, who has edited this book. She has done an excellent job, respecting absolutely word for word the true report I had to write. Many editors want to turn the words and sentences as they wish to, quote, look good, as they say. That may be permissible for a fictional novel, but here Janet has respected my will and the will of the theory, and she has done well, believe me. Another thing about truth is that um, it's not very popular, when it first comes out. A lot of people are into marketing, clickbait, getting sales, things like that. But from my experience, you have a initial hype about it, but then it dies down. But the truth remains. The truth is sort of like I think of it like Alcoholics Anonymous in a way. It changes the world, it changes your life, but it's very nonchalant, very quiet. It's like under the radar kind of thing. And that's how truth is. And eventually the truth will come out and it will last. So like for example, AA, they don't do a lot of commercials or marketing or sign up here and there, but they do a lot of word of mouth, a lot of experiences, and they've been around for a long time, and they're for those who are drug addicts or many different addicts. AA is a true staple, I think. Uh, so anyways, that's how truth works. That's my opinion anyways. So, okay, preface. I have written this book as a result of orders received and which I have obeyed. Further, it is an account of events that happened to me personally. This I affirm. I imagine that to some extent this extraordinary story will appear to some readers as science fiction, a story entirely invented, but I do not have the imagination that such a fabrication would require. This is not science fiction. And a lot of times fiction is probably more true than non-science fiction, isn't it? The reader of good faith will be able to recognize the truth in the message I transmit from my new friends to the people of the planet Earth. This message, in spite of numerous references to races and religions, reflects neither racial nor religious bias on behalf of the author. Michel Desmarquet, January 1989. They have eyes, but they do not see, ears, and they do not hear. The Bible. All right. So I hope you enjoyed that and looking forward to reading this book again. And yeah, I hope to see you then. And again, I'll leave all the registration links, the podcast link, where to buy the book link. Oh, and check out our merch as well. Support us if you find this helpful and find value in it. And I hope you guys all have a great day. We'll see you soon. Bye bye now.